Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. On this channel, we recently talked about Nigerian 419 scams last week, and I thought we would continue that particular discussion by talking about a very particular scam. It's not exclusive to Nigeria. In fact, the cases that I've kind of just read briefly about have kind of been more about scams that have been originating in the United States of America. This is called the grandparents scam. It is something that is one of the more bizarre types of advance fee fraud out there. Advance fee fraud is, of course, getting someone to send another person money for a deceptive reason. And this one sort of functions like somebody will call a person and they will say, "Hi, I'm your grandfather, or I'm your grandmother. I was just taking my trip to such and such place, but I've run into a problem. I just need you to send me some money, and I can get out of this particular problem." And when I was first reading about this years ago, I was like, how could anybody possibly fall for something like that? But then you read some of the details, and multiple people have even stated that they were genuinely talking to their grandparents, the people who have fallen for this scam. It's like, that's exactly how it functions, though. So they get a phone call, and they're like, the person is claiming to be a family member, but usually one of their grandparents, grandmother or grandfather, hence the name the grandparents scam, and that's how they fall for something like this. I have heard of at least one other instance where somebody was giving money to someone who claimed to be a distant cousin. "Oh, you have such and such last name. Yeah, do you know such and such person? I also have the same last name. Oh, we're actually cousins." One of those advance fee fraud things was done that way, which is a little bit more plausible, but it just seemed rather mind-blowing that people would actually be giving money to a scammer who is perhaps just talking in sort of like an older person's voice. Maybe it is genuinely a senior citizen as well, because, I mean, crime knows no limits based on age or boundaries or gender. Crime knows no limits. It happens in all different sorts of demographics. And one of the easiest ways to know that is just look at the FBI most wanted criminals. They are from all different backgrounds, all different ages. Countless people are capable of crimes, especially something like advance fee fraud, just like getting someone to give you money. But, you know, like, I think a lot of the things that people, just sort of the reasons why somebody would fall for this particular scam is just kind of how far out it is. You hear somebody talking, and then they're claiming to be your grandparent. Maybe they're saying, "Oh, yeah, I was just on the way to visit your auntie, and then I ran into a little trouble. Now I'm at the Cincinnati airport, and I don't have the money for the plane ticket." I don't know. I really don't think a lot of people would fall for that, but this is a real thing, and that's why we're talking about it now. People have fallen for this stuff in the past. There used to be this YouTube channel out there called, I believe it was just called Wackhead, but the host would introduce himself as Wackhead Simpson, and what he would do is kind of just expose scammers, usually people in Nigeria as well as other parts of West Africa. But they did a very interesting episode once. Once again, the channel was from Wackhead Simpson, and they did one where they sent out an email to 100 people where they said, "Hey, you've won the lottery, just give us some money and then we can send you the full cash prize, pay like a gift tax or something like that." They sent out that email to 100 people. 77 wrote back thinking that it was real. And before you start to kind of question the situation and be like, maybe some people just were kind of testing the waters. I've definitely done that with scams, things that you know are fake, and you don't ever give them the money, but they kind of put them out there, and you're just like, you're kind of replying to see, well, hey, what is this? Who is this person saying that I've won $1 million when I didn't enter any lottery? But out of the 77 people that did reply, they even just showed an example. They made a phone call to one guy, and then they had the whole conversation. He's just saying, "Hey, congratulations, you won the lottery." And the guy's just going along with it, and then at the end, they're like, "Hey, dude, this was just a hoax. We're not real. Be careful in the future. Never give money to people." People do fall for things. And they did that video purely to show that if you think that someone is never going to fall for these scams, that's just not the case. people will fall for all types of scams. I mean, like, especially some of the things when you see the West Africans, like people in Nigeria, in Ghana, and it's spread around other parts of West Africa as well. It's not only those two nations, but they are the most commonly associated with 419 scamming. Even it comes to us from the Nigerian legal code, 419. It's like you see like this picture of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman in a bikini in Nigeria, and she says that she's the manager of a bank, or that she's here with her father who's a doctor and they're saving lives in the hospital. Yeah, okay, but you know, I even questioned one once, because like I said, there were lots of websites like InterPals and Skyrock where the scammers would frequent, and I was just like, no way anyone has ever sent you money. And that person just wrote back, ha 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 ha, are you so sure? Because that person is just like, there's a high chance that somebody did give money to that. And the way they kind of relay this in sort of one of the documentary films is they're kind of interviewing a guy that uses pictures of various women on websites pretending to be a woman. Once again, you know, this guy's just pretending to be a woman on dating sites and other social media platforms. Very, very pathetic stuff. It's very kind of sickening, because you're just preying on lonely people. Not even gullible so much, but people who are just lonely and just really need some type of human interaction and emotional involvement in their lives. And that's, I mean, this is really something that we shouldn't be taking too lightly to. Okay, but they interviewed him, and they just sort of explained that it takes about 3 months before you really get somebody to send you money. But, you know, in the developing world, that's actually something, even if you're talking about $100. I mean, I've talked to people from various developing world nations across Africa. They spend a month working, you know, working at least 5 days a week, and they can earn $25 to $50 just from actual work. So when someone can get like $100 or something, you know, from just sitting around on the computer, maybe watching videos in one tab and putting out these kind of scam emails in the other, maybe they're going to say that. And that's what a Nigerian woman told me when we were discussing this stuff about 419 scamming. She simply said that scamming provides more money than even the most lucrative jobs that many people can get. I was talking to another Nigerian about the subject, and he was a guy who worked in a veterinary office, and he just said many people who are involved with scamming are literates, they are educated, they are university graduates. It's not something about people who are dumb or don't know any better. It's just that. It's like it is one of the easiest ways for people in Nigeria and Ghana and other African nations and global nations. Russia had a very big scamming problem for a long time. I haven't heard too many recent developments about it, but people all over the world will turn to this because it is just a way to earn more money, and that's wrong. It shouldn't be justified. That's not an excuse, but that's the reason why it's happening. Yes, greed is involved. Yes, these people are just greedy, and they don't want to do an honest day's work, and then they want to commit criminal activity just because they want to get away with it, and they don't actually want to have real jobs, and they want to get more money for sitting around sending out scam emails. That is definitely real. But when you really examine the picture in its whole, you have to look at where the problem is coming from. We will never get a solution until we identify the root cause of the problem. And there are some people out there who are just like, if you improve the economic situation of a nation, then the crime will go down, that all of the problems will go down. I don't know what to make of that, because it's a very, very general statement. I mean, there are countless people on the internet and talk radio, YouTubers, commentators that say variants of that statement. Improve the economic situation, and crime and violence and all of these things, abuses, they will all go down. But once again, you know, it's a very superficial statement. Life is just like all sorts of different things coming together, and it's difficult to get a sort of it's difficult to make a bold statement like that sound 100% convincing. Maybe it's not even designed to be that convincing, but when we're going to examine something like the grandparents scam, you know, it's like, I don't know if you guys ever listened to Howard Stern or something, but one of the guys on the show, Richard Christie, would always do prank phone calls, phony phone calls, and he would always try to do this old woman's voice, and he would be like, yes, hello, I would like to speak to someone, but he never fooled anyone. Everybody thought he was just like an old man, and they'd be like, hello, sir. But the point is, I think that this grandparents scam actually has a lot of people like that, where they're just sort of like, hello there, sonny, this is Grandpa. a bunch of people just talking in very, very implausible voices, but are meant to sound like they are kind of representing someone's grandparent, someone's grandmother or grandfather, and they're like, oh, yeah, that was definitely my grandfather. I mean, a lot of people probably just aren't suspecting it. And when you aren't in that suspicious nature, you're often more likely to fall for something like that. I mean, they even talk about this in a handful of films mention that, where it's like, was it actually your relative's voice that you were hearing, or was it someone who just imitated a few sentences in a man's voice or a woman's voice, or in this case, an elderly woman, or an elderly woman's voice, or an elderly man's voice? Now, there was a scam that was going on in Florida a couple years ago, and this was not involving the internet, mind you. People were selling tickets to heaven for $100, and they were posting about it on Facebook, and all through the comments section, people were just like, if you're dumb enough to fall for that, you deserve it. And that's like what we were saying last time. I'm radically opposed to that type of thinking. Even if you think that someone should know better, or you think that someone should kind of have more awareness, or you think that that person is unintelligent for falling for that type of scam, we should not be setting the precedent that we blame the victim in this case. That's only going to further the cycle of destruction. That's going to further the cycle of scamming, because that tells the entire world that it's okay to scam these people. They deserve it because of their low intellect, that they're going to fall for something like that. Let's blame the criminals. Let's blame the scammers. Anybody can be deceived regardless of intelligence. And you see a lot of bizarre scams out there. We've briefly mentioned one about Peter Popoff. He was a guy who claimed to be sort of like a psychic and telepathic pastor, and he was outed by James Randi, and that was one of James Randi's claims to fame. He won the MacArthur Award for that one. But after Peter Popoff got out of prison, he started selling like magic holy water in little bottles and such, and very similar to the old snake oil salesman model. And you gotta just look where it's like, people should know better. I completely agree. And they should know better, but you don't blame the victim, you blame the criminal. So what's the answer? Education, awareness, and we really need a better mechanism for it, because I really find that, aside from that Wackhead Simpson video I mentioned, which I thought was done in a rather, done in a rather kind of convincing fashion, that was a good example of something educational. When it comes to a lot of the educational materials about things like scamming, 419s, and advanced fee fraud in general, I find that a lot of it is very condescending. It's almost insulting the people who are watching it, where it's just like, you must not be intelligent if you're watching this video. Let me show you how to be a smart person. I mean, like, people are saying that in sort of a paraphrased fashion. And once again, if not only should we not blame the victims, we should have a culture that is somewhat conducive to this type of education and spreading awareness about scams. Otherwise, the scammers are going to win. And it's like, it's not something that we should be very condescending with. We should just be raising awareness of how different scams function so people can know how to avoid it. But first and foremost, if somebody's asking for money online, it's a scam. If you're talking to somebody that you've never met before, it's a scam. And even something of this nature, where it's like somebody swears that they've talked to their grandmother or their grandfather, I mean, you should probably at least find out where they are and talk to other family members first before sending them money. And I know the average person is very well aware of that. We mentioned this last time in the 419 upload, when we were like, they're the two reasons why people kind of are so blatantly obvious with their scams. It's so obvious that it's a scam, and those two reasons are, it puts a person in a false sense of awareness. Oh, this person must be harmless. They don't seem like they're that smart. And the second thing is, it helps weed out the gullible individual. The average person will not fall for a scam. The average person will not fall for, well, hello, you must be my grandson. Can you send me $200? I'm trapped in Cincinnati. Don't know why we love Cincinnati so much today, but we do. Most people will not do that. They'll be like, my grandfather's dead. Who are you talking to? And it's like, No, I mean, many people will not fall for that. So it weeds out the gullible individuals. Otherwise, they would just be talking and talking and talking to someone who isn't going to send them money. And that's one of the reasons why we had the things called scam baiters, who were just kind of wasting the time of the scammers, keeping them occupied so they don't go out and actually steal money from somebody else. But we have to remember, we call this fraud, right? We introduced this crime as advance fee fraud. It should be viewed the same as stealing. This should not be viewed as something that is less important or less serious or less problematic or less evil because it is done with words as opposed to physical force. I mean, it's a crime, it's illegal, and the answer to it is to do something constructive. They are being destructive, let's do something constructive. And once again, we just need some better educational resources out there, and some websites that are on the social media side, they need to get better ways to report things. You don't need to fill out 3 pages of forms to report a scammer. It should be done in like under 10 seconds. You click a few boxes, report, and moderators should be viewing this stuff much more frequently. And they have the resources to do something like that. It's just a matter of time, and it's just a matter of kind of making the decisions. Because a lot of people do not view this as a priority. Once again, this doesn't affect the average citizen. This affects people who are sort of, it's just not every person. It's kind of like the few and far between, but if scamming became the 3rd largest industry in Nigeria, it's affecting a lot of people. And the thing is, it was getting bigger a couple of years ago. I haven't looked at the exact data in the past couple of years, but it's probably ballooned out of control. I mean, this is something that's just getting worse and worse and worse. What I can say is about the scams that I've heard coming from places like Russia is that they're much more about the romance side as opposed to the West African scams could be any sort of thing. Like we mentioned a few of them, the robotic tractor scam. I'm an engineer, give me money for my robotic tractor. I'm a beautiful woman who is trapped in a hotel and I have no money and they won't let me leave until I pay the bill. Or there'll just be something like, I live in a rural area in West Africa, and I have no money. I don't even have a bed. I'm poor. Give me money. I mean, those are things like that. The Russian scams were much more like, I want a boyfriend, I want a girlfriend, maybe if you're lesbian or something. Mostly women coming from Russia were doing stuff like that. And so, at least in the cases that I've heard about. And they were more focused on the romantic side, pretending to be in love, when in reality they just want money. As well as some of them were sort of saying that they would do live sex shows, but then they take the money and they don't ever do that for you. And I mean live sex on the web camera, like a cam sex sort of thing. And no, I did not fall for that firsthand. Just reading. Yeah, there are better things to waste money on than that. And it's not even that exciting when you really think about it. But anyway, that's our kind of little discussion on scamming coming to an end. And what do you think about something such as the grandparents scam? Do you really think something like that would be that successful? What do you think about any of the other statements we've made about 419 scamming or advance fee fraud in general? And what do you think would be the biggest antidote to a particular problem like this that we have going on nationwide? It's not just Russia. It's not just Nigeria. Nationwide, worldwide, global communities. It's all international now. What is the biggest solution to this problem? Until next time,